The massive crystalline halls of the Galactic Council Station hummed with nervous energy, as delegates from across the galaxy gathered for what many believed would be humanity's final hearing. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the towering assembly, her small human frame dwarfed by the alien representatives that filled the chamber like living monuments to power. The Zephyrian delegate, a creature resembling a walking tree made of silver bark, rustled its metallic leaves in what Sarah recognized as contempt. To her left, the insectoid Carvex clicked their mandibles in rhythm, creating an unsettling symphony that echoed through the vast space. Above them all, the energy beings known as the ethereals pulsed with colors that hurt human eyes to look at directly. "The human delegation has requested this emergency session," announced the Council's AI moderator, its voice resonating from speakers embedded in the walls. "State your purpose." Representative Chen. Sarah stepped forward, her boots clicking against the polished floor that reflected the light from a dozen alien suns streaming through the station's transparent dome. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, but standing here now, surrounded by beings who could obliterate Earth with a thought. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Honored council members," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "For 3 standard years, humanity has served this council faithfully. We have followed every directive, paid every tribute, and accepted every restriction placed upon our species." The draconian representative, a massive reptilian creature with scales that shifted between deep purple and black, leaned forward on its throne-like chair. "Yes, young species, you have been adequately compliant. This is expected behavior." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she continued. "We were told that compliance would earn us respect. That following the Galactic Accords would grant us the protection promised to all Council member species." Her voice began to rise, carrying an edge that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. "We were lied to." A wave of surprised chirps, growls, and electronic bleeps swept through the chamber. The Carvex delegate stood, its 6 legs carrying its mantis-like body to its full imposing height. "You dare accuse this council of deception? Mammal? Number." The Galactic Council, stunned. Humanity demands retribution. The emergency session convened 18 hours after Ambassador Chen's ultimatum, but the Galactic Council chamber felt different now. Where once there had been casual arrogance and dismissive superiority, tension crackled through the air like electricity before a storm. Delegates huddled in their species groups, speaking in urgent whispers while their assistants scurried between seats carrying data tablets and emergency briefings. High Counselor Vex Thera, an ancient ethereal whose energy form had presided over the council for 3 centuries, pulsed a deep amber as she called the session to order. Her translated voice carried the weight of eons as she addressed the assembly. "Fellow counselors, we face an unprecedented situation. Never before has a member species issued such an ultimatum to this body." The energy being's form flickered with what might have been uncertainty. "We must decide how to respond to humanity's demands." The draconian representative, Lord Commander Kethvar, was the first to speak. His massive form shifted on his reinforced chair as his deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "The answer is simple. We call their bluff. No single species can survive outside council protection. The humans will come crawling back within a year, begging forgiveness. If they survive that long," added the Carvex delegate, its mandibles clicking nervously. "Without our trade networks, their colonies will starve. Without our protection fleets, the Void Reapers will finish what they started." But even as these words were spoken, holographic displays around the chamber showed intelligence reports that painted a very different picture. Human ships were moving throughout the galaxy with surprising coordination. Their fleets, far from being the ragtag collection of converted civilian vessels the Council had expected, showed advanced technology and military discipline that spoke of years of careful preparation. Senator Quillick of the Aquatic Depths Dwellers released a stream of worried bubbles into her environmental suit before speaking. "Perhaps we should examine their actual capabilities before dismissing them. Our intelligence services are reporting disturbing developments." She activated her personal display, and the chamber filled with images that made several delegates lean forward in surprise. Human shipyards in the asteroid belt of their home system worked around the clock, protected by defensive platforms that bristled with weapons of unknown design. More concerning were the Allied fleets clearly visible in the images. Ships from a dozen different species working alongside human vessels in what appeared to be joint training exercises. The Forgotten Rim clans have openly declared for humanity, Quillick continued, her voice carrying through the translation system with unusual clarity. 3 outcast confederations have pledged their support. Even some of our own member species are wavering. Impossible, growled the Zephyrian delegate, Primarch Sylveth Hall. The metallic being's silver leaves rustled with agitation. No species would dare defy Council authority for these upstart mammals. The Centauri Republic has already recalled their ambassadors, Quillick replied dryly. The Proxima colonies are declaring neutrality, and the Tau Ceti Federation is openly questioning why the Council allows Void Reaper attacks to go unpunished when the victims are human. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. What had begun as humanity's isolated complaint was spreading like wildfire through the galaxy's lesser powers, species that had long harbored their own grievances against Council indifference. Admiral Vexkaran of the Military Council stepped forward, his 4 arms gesturing to tactical displays that materialized around him. We have completed our analysis of human military capabilities. The results are concerning. The displays show detailed breakdowns of human ship designs, weapon systems, and tactical doctrines. What they revealed sent ripples of unease through the assembled delegates. Human vessels show technological advancement that should have taken them decades to achieve, the Admiral continued. Their weapons incorporate principles we've never seen before. Most troubling, their ships appear to be specifically designed to counter our standard military doctrine. Lord Commander Kethvar's tail lashed behind his chair. You're telling us these primitives have somehow developed weapons that threaten Council forces? I'm telling you that these primitives have been studying our military for 3 years and have designed their entire fleet to exploit our weaknesses. The Admiral's tone was grim. Their ships are smaller and faster than ours, but they pack firepower that rival our heavy cruisers. They use swarm tactics and hit-and-run strategies that our battle computers aren't programmed to counter. And they're fighters. He paused, his expression troubled. Their fighter pilots show a level of aggression and tactical creativity that's unprecedented. The implications hung heavy in the air. The Council's military superiority had been built on the assumption that member species would never coordinate against them, that advanced technology would remain in Council hands, and that any rebellion would be disorganized and easy to crush. Humanity had shattered every one of those assumptions. There's more, Admiral Thexkaran continued. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected at least 40 human fleets moving through hyperspace. They're not heading toward Council space. They're positioning themselves around major trade routes and strategic resource points throughout the galaxy. Primarch Sylveth Hall's leaves began to chime with anxiety. They wouldn't dare attack civilian targets. They don't need to, the Admiral replied. If they simply interdicted our major trade routes, it would cost the Council trillions in lost revenue. Worse, it would demonstrate to the entire galaxy that Council space isn't as secure as we've claimed. High Counselor Vex Thara pulsed a deep red, the ethereal equivalent of deep thought, mixed with frustration. Show us their specific demands again. The list appeared in the air above the chamber, each point highlighted in the stark blue of official Council documentation. First, the immediate extradition of all Void Reaper commanders involved in the Kepler 442b attack for trial under galactic law. Second, the surrender of Zephyrian military officers who provided intelligence to the pirates. Third, formal punishment for any Council member found to have aided or abetted the attack. Fourth, a public apology from the Council acknowledging their failure to protect human civilians. Fifth, a review of Council response protocols to ensure equal treatment for all member species. These demands are reasonable, said a voice from the chamber's upper gallery. Delegate Morthok of the Silicon-based Christine Confederation had spoken rarely in council sessions, but her words carried weight due to her species' reputation for logical analysis. If presented by any established member species, we would have already granted most of these requests. The Christine Confederation recognizes the logic in humanity's position, she continued, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. For 3 standard years, this council has applied different standards to human requests for protection. We have dismissed their complaints, ignored their evidence, and allowed their people to be murdered without consequence. Their demand for equal treatment is not only reasonable, it is legally required under the accords we all signed. The draconian Lord Commander stood to his full imposing height. You would side with these mammals against the council that has maintained galactic peace for millennia. I side with justice and logic, Morthok replied calmly. The council has failed to uphold its own laws. Humanity is simply demanding that we honor our commitments. More voices joined the debate as delegates began to choose sides. The Proximan ambassador expressed support for humanity's position. The Beta Centauri representative questioned why different standards existed for different species. Even some traditional council allies began to waver as the logical foundation of humanity's demands became impossible to ignore. But it was the next intelligence report that truly shook the council to its foundations. Admiral Thex Karen activated his displays once more, and the chamber filled with images that made every delegate sit up in alarm. 6 hours ago, long-range sensors detected this. The display showed a massive space installation, unlike anything in council records. The humans have constructed a battle station in deep space, outside any claimed territory. Our analysts estimate it could engage an entire council fleet. The image rotated slowly, revealing the station's true size, easily dwarfing any council facility. Weapon emplacements dotted its surface like deadly flowers, while docking bays large enough to house hundreds of ships gaped open along its flanks. Where did they get the resources for such a construction? Demanded the Carvex delegate. Unknown, the Admiral admitted. But spectroscopic analysis suggests materials from at least 12 different systems, including several outside council space. This required a level of coordination and planning that indicates years of preparation. They've been preparing for war since the day they joined the council, whispered Senator Quillick, her environmental suit fogging with shocked bubbles. No, corrected High Counselor Vex Thara, her energy form pulsing with what might have been admiration. They've been preparing for independence. The distinction hit the chamber like a physical blow. This wasn't a traditional rebellion seeking to overthrow the existing order. Humanity wasn't trying to conquer or destroy the council. They were building the infrastructure needed to survive outside it. They had spent 3 years creating their own navy, forging their own alliances, and establishing their own industrial base. They had been planning their exodus since the moment they realized the council would never treat them as equals. How long before they complete their preparations? Asked Primarch Silvethal, his metallic voice unusually quiet. Admiral Thex Karen consulted his tactical displays. Based on current fleet movements and construction activity, they're already complete. Everything we're seeing suggests they could declare independence and defend that decision immediately. Then why the ultimatum? Wondered Delegate Morthok. If they're already prepared to leave, why give us a chance to respond? The answer came from an unexpected source. The chamber's AI moderator, which normally remained silent except to maintain order, suddenly activated its speakers. Analysis of human diplomatic patterns suggests they are offering the council an opportunity to salvage its reputation, the AI announced. Their ultimatum allows the council to choose justice over convenience, while maintaining the fiction that the council responds to moral pressure rather than military threats. The silence that followed was profound. Every delegate in the chamber understood the implication. Humanity wasn't begging for justice. They were offering the council a face-saving way to do the right thing. They had built the power to enforce their demands, but they were giving the council one last chance to grant them voluntarily. 29 hours remain, High Counselor Vex Thara announced, her energy form now pulsing with rapid nervous patterns. We must decide how to respond to humanity's demands. As the delegates filed out for individual species consultations, the weight of decision hung heavy in the recycled air. The Galactic Council, which had ruled the galaxy through a combination of superior technology and divide-and-conquer politics, suddenly faced a species that had united their enemies, matched their technology, and prepared for independence. The humans had learned to play the galactic game better than their teachers. Now the Council had to decide whether they would bend to justice or break against humanity's resolve. Outside the station's windows, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the crisis brewing among the small beings who claimed to rule the space between them. But somewhere in that darkness, human ships waited with the patience of predators, ready to defend their species' right to exist as free beings rather than galactic subjects. The clock was ticking, and the Council's choice would echo through history for generations to come. With only 6 hours remaining until humanity's deadline, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with frantic activity. Emergency committees had been meeting around the clock, intelligence reports streamed in constantly, and the pressure of decision weighed heavily on every delegate present. The chamber itself had been reconfigured for what many suspected would be a historic vote. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again before the assembled aliens. But this time, she wasn't alone. Representatives from 17 different species flanked her position, their presence sending shockwaves through the Council establishment. The Centauri Republic's silver-skinned ambassador stood to her right, while the crystalline delegate from the Vega systems reflected light patterns of solidarity to her left. High Counselor Vexathara's energy form pulsed with patterns of deep concern as she called the session to order. The deadline approaches. This council must now decide how to respond to the human ultimatum. The atmosphere in the chamber was electric with tension. Intelligence reports had continued to pour in throughout the previous day, painting an increasingly clear picture of humanity's preparations. Their fleets weren't just positioned defensively around human space. They had quietly established supply bases, communication networks, and defensive installations throughout the galaxy's outer rim. More concerning to the Council, nearly 24 species had publicly declared their intention to recognize human independence if the Council rejected their demands. Lord Commander Kethvar of the Draconians was the first to speak, his massive form radiating barely controlled anger. This Council bows to no ultimatum from any species, regardless of their military preparations. To negotiate under threat sets a precedent that will destroy galactic stability. What precedent? Challenged Ambassador Chen, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The precedent that the Council will actually enforce its own laws when member species are murdered? The precedent that justice applies equally to all beings, regardless of their planet of origin? She gestured to the representatives beside her. These delegates represent species that have watched the Council's selective justice for decades. The Centauri Republic has lost 3 colonies to pirates operating from Council space. Pirates that were never pursued because they shared technology with their patrons. The Vega systems have been systematically excluded from major trade negotiations despite their contributions to Council science. The Pattern Weavers have been denied representation on the Economic Council for 2 centuries because their unique biology makes older species uncomfortable. Each example hit the chamber like a physical blow. The gathered delegates began to murmur among themselves as the scope of Council inequities was laid bare. What they had dismissed as individual complaints were revealed to be part of a systematic pattern of discrimination and neglect. Primarch Sylveth Hall of the Zephyrians attempted to regain control of the narrative. Individual grievances aside, the reality is that the Council system has maintained galactic peace for over 3,000 years. Humanity threatens to destroy that peace for their own selfish ambitions. Peace? Sarah's voice carried a note of incredulous anger. You call the systematic oppression of younger species peace? You call the murder of human children peace? You call the exploitation of weaker civilizations peace? She activated her holographic display one final time, but instead of showing human military capabilities, the images now displayed Council member species throughout the galaxy. Real peace isn't built on fear and oppression. Real peace is built on justice, equality, and mutual respect. For 3,000 years, the Council has maintained order through intimidation and selective enforcement. That's not peace. That's tyranny, dressed up in diplomatic language. The images showed species throughout the galaxy, some thriving under Council protection, others struggling under Council restrictions, and many simply existing in the shadows of galactic civilization. The display made clear what many had long suspected but never dared voice. The Council system created and maintained a hierarchy that benefited established powers at the expense of newer or weaker species. Admiral Thex Karan stepped forward with his final intelligence briefing, his forearms manipulating complex tactical displays. The military situation has evolved beyond our worst projections. In the past 6 hours, human fleets have taken positions around every major Council military installation. They're not threatening attack. They're demonstrating that they can threaten attack whenever they choose. The tactical display showed the galaxy in real time, with Council forces marked in blue and human allied forces in red. The red markers surrounded every blue installation like stars around planets, close enough to strike but far enough away to avoid being seen as immediately hostile. More concerning, the Admiral continued, is intelligence suggesting that several Council member species are preparing to declare neutrality in any conflict between the Council and humanity. The Tau Ceti Federation has recalled its fleets to defensive positions. The Frontier Alliance has suspended all military cooperation agreements. Even some core worlds are questioning whether they want to fight a war to preserve a system that benefits so few. Delegate Morthok of the Christine Confederation rose from her place in the gallery. Her crystalline form reflected the chamber's lights as she spoke with the measured logic her species was known for. Fellow counselors, we face a choice that will define the next era of galactic civilization. We can attempt to maintain the current system through force, knowing that it will require us to destroy species whose only crime was demanding equal treatment under laws we wrote. Or we can acknowledge that our system has failed to live up to its own ideals and work with humanity to create something better. You speak of ideals, rumbled Lord Commander Kethvar. But what humanity truly threatens is stability. If we grant their demands, every species in the galaxy will begin making demands. Chaos will follow. Perhaps, Morthok acknowledged. But consider the alternative. If we refuse humanity's demands and they declare independence, what message does that send to every oppressed species in the galaxy? That the only way to achieve justice is through military force? That the Council respects only strength, not law? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Fighting humanity wouldn't just mean war with a single species. It would mean war with the principle that justice should apply equally to all beings, win or lose. Such a conflict would poison the Council's moral authority for generations. High Counselor Vex Thara pulsed with deep amber patterns as she processed the debate. The ethereal consensus has reached a conclusion. The current system is unsustainable. Whether we grant humanity's demands or fight their independence movement, the galaxy has changed. The age of unquestioned Council authority is ending. Then we fight to preserve what we can, declared the Carvex delegate, its mandibles clicking with agitation. Better war than surrender to chaos. Is that what you think this is? Sarah asked quietly. Surrender to chaos? She walked to the center of the chamber, her small human form somehow commanding the attention of every massive alien surrounding her. We're not trying to destroy the Council. We're trying to save it from itself. Explain, demanded Primarch Sylveth Hall. The galaxy is changing whether you acknowledge it or not, Sarah replied. New species are achieving spaceflight every year. Old grievances are festering. The Outer Rim civilizations are growing stronger, while the core worlds become more isolated. You can either adapt to these changes and help guide them, or you can be swept aside by them. She gestured to her allied representatives. These species don't want to destroy galactic civilization. They want to participate in it as equals rather than subjects. Humanity's proposal isn't the end of the Council. It's the beginning of a new kind of council. One based on justice, rather than intimidation. And if we refuse? The question came from Senator Quillick of the Depths Dwellers. Sarah's expression remained calm, but steel entered her voice. Then we'll build our own civilization. One where species are judged by their character rather than their age, where justice isn't selective, and where children can sleep safely, regardless of which star they orbit. The finality in her tone sent ripples through the chamber. This wasn't a bluff or a negotiating position. Humanity had genuinely prepared to leave galactic civilization rather than accept second-class status within it. Admiral Thex Karen consulted his chronometer. 1 hour remains until the deadline. High Counselor Vex's Thera began to pulse in the rapid patterns that indicated an ethereal consensus forming. Around the chamber, delegates huddled with their advisors, their various forms of communication, creating a symphony of decision-making that would reshape the galaxy. The vote will proceed, Vex Thera announced. Each species will declare their position on humanity's demands. The decision requires a 2/3 majority of current council members. The voting began with the ancient powers. The Draconians voted to reject humanity's demands and maintain current policies. The Carvex joined them, as did several other established species that benefited from the existing hierarchy. But as the vote continued, cracks in the council's unity became apparent. The Christine Confederation voted to accept humanity's demands. The Depths Dwellers abstained, explaining that they needed time to consider the implications. Species after species broke ranks as the scope of galactic sentiment became clear. When the final vote was tallied, the result sent shockwaves through the chamber. 47 species in favor of accepting humanity's demands, 32 opposed, and 15 abstentions. The 2/3 majority wasn't quite reached, but the message was unmistakable. The galaxy wanted change. The vote fails to reach the required majority, High Counselor Vex Thera announced, her energy form now pulsing with what might have been regret. However, this council recognizes the clear will of the galactic community. She turned to address Sarah directly. Ambassador Chen, while we cannot formally grant all of your demands through standard procedures, this council hereby establishes an emergency justice committee to investigate the Kepler 442b incident. The Void Reaper commanders will be extradited for trial. The Zephyrian officers involved will face council justice. And this council formally apologizes for its failure to adequately protect human civilians. The chamber erupted. Species that had voted against the measures protested angrily, while humanity's supporters cheered in their various ways. But Sarah remained calm, waiting for the noise to die down. That's a start, she said simply. But it's not enough. The words fell like stones into still water. Every being in the chamber turned to stare at the human ambassador, who had just been offered a partial victory, but was apparently prepared to reject it. Explain, High Counselor Vex Thera requested, her patterns now showing genuine confusion. The fundamental problem isn't just the Kepler incident, Sarah replied. The fundamental problem is a system that makes such incidents inevitable. You're offering to treat the symptoms while ignoring the disease. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes or optical sensors of dozens of alien species. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The words hit like a thunderclap. Even humanity's supporters appeared stunned by the announcement. But Sarah wasn't finished. However, we hereby invite every species in this galaxy to join us in forming a new organization, the Galactic Union. Membership will be based on mutual respect, equal representation, and shared commitment to justice for all sentient beings. The chamber dissolved into chaos as delegates tried to process this development. Humanity wasn't just leaving. They were offering an alternative. The implications were staggering. Furthermore, Sarah continued, her voice cutting through the noise, the Galactic Union formally recognizes the independence of any species that chooses to leave the Council and join us. Our combined fleets will guarantee the safety and sovereignty of all Union members. On the great displays around the chamber, real-time communications showed the galaxy's response. Within minutes of Sarah's announcement, over 30 species had declared their intention to join the human-led Galactic Union. Others announced their neutrality, while a few declared their continued loyalty to the Council. As chaos reigned in the chamber, Sarah Chen walked calmly toward the exit. Behind her, the Galactic Council, the organization that had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia, began to tear itself apart as species chose sides in what would become known as the Great Reformation. The age of human submission was over. The age of galactic equality had begun. Outside the station's windows, the stars remained unchanged, but the civilization that existed between them would never be the same. Humanity had gambled everything on the belief that justice was worth fighting for. They had won. I accuse this council of hypocrisy. Sarah shot back, her fear transforming into anger. She activated her personal holographic display, and images filled the space above her head. 3 months ago, the mining colony on Kepler 442b was attacked. 17,000 human civilians were killed. Men, women, children, all slaughtered by Void Reaper pirates. The images showed the aftermath of the attack. Burned settlements, destroyed mining equipment, and memorial walls covered with the names of the dead. Several of the more sensitive species in the chamber recoiled at the graphic evidence. The Void Reapers, Sarah continued, her voice now steady with controlled fury, operate from bases in Zephyrian space. When we requested Council intervention, as is our right under Article 7 of the Galactic Accords, we were told that the attack was an unfortunate incident, and that the Council could not act without concrete evidence of Zephyrian involvement. The silver-barked Zephyrian delegates' leaves rustled more violently. The Void Reapers are independent actors. The Zephyrian collective cannot be held responsible for every criminal that passes through our territory. Sarah's smile was cold as winter on Earth's polar caps. Then perhaps the Council would like to explain this. The holographic display shifted, showing recorded communications between Zephyrian officials and known Void Reaper commanders. These transmissions were intercepted by our intelligence services. They clearly show Zephyrian military officers providing targeting information for human colonies in exchange for a percentage of stolen resources. The chamber erupted. Delegates who had been lounging in their seats now stood, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that the AI moderator struggled to control. The ethereals pulsed angry red, while the aquatic depths dwellers in their environmental suits released clouds of agitated bubbles. Order! Order in the chamber! The AI announced, its volume increasing until it drowned out the noise. The Zephyrian delegate's metallic voice cut through the din. Even if these transmissions are authentic, which we dispute, the actions of a few rogue officers do not represent official collective policy. No, Sarah agreed, her voice now deadly quiet. But your government's refusal to extradite those officers for trial does. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the chamber. As does the Council's decision to accept that refusal without question. The ancient Terran archives spoke of moments when history pivoted on a single word, a single decision. Sarah felt the weight of such a moment pressing down on her shoulders as she looked up at the assembled aliens who held her species' fate in their manipulative appendages. When the Draconians were raided by the same Void Reapers, she continued, the Council authorized a full military response within 6 hours. When Carvex shipping was threatened, you deployed 3 battle fleets. When ethereal meditation worlds were disturbed, you created a permanent protection zone spanning 12 systems. Her eyes swept across the chamber, meeting whatever passed for eyes among the various species. But when humans die, when human children are murdered in their beds, the Council suddenly develops a case of diplomatic blindness. The Draconian representative's tail lashed behind its chair, a sign of either anger or discomfort. The situations were different. Those species have been council members for millennia. They have earned certain privileges through long service. Privileges like not having their people slaughtered without consequences? Sarah's voice cracked like a whip. Privileges like having their complaints taken seriously? Privileges like being treated as if their lives have value? She took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would either save humanity or damn them. I come before you today not to beg for justice, but to inform you that humanity will no longer accept this treatment. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background hum of the station's systems seemed to quiet, as every being in the chamber focused on the small human woman standing alone before them. Are you threatening the council? The question came from the depths dweller, its voice bubbling through the translation system. No, Sarah said simply. I'm serving notice. She activated another section of her holographic display, and new images appeared. Massive shipyards in Earth's asteroid belt, factories working around the clock, and most shocking of all, fleets of warships unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. While the Council has been dismissing our complaints and ignoring our dead, humanity has been busy. We have built our own fleets, developed our own weapons, and forged our own alliances with species that the Council has similarly dismissed or mistreated. The images showed ships from a dozen different non-Council species working alongside human vessels. The warrior clans of the Forgotten Rim, the tech-savvy outcasts from the Galactic Core, and most surprisingly, several rebel factions from within Council territories. This is impossible, breathed the Carvex delegate. Your species lacks the resources, the knowledge, the time to construct such forces. Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. You saw a young species, barely out of our home system, and you thought we would be grateful for whatever scraps you threw our way. You thought we would be content to serve as your miners, your laborers, your convenient scapegoats when things went wrong. The ethereals pulsed a deep, ominous purple. What do you want, human? Justice, Sarah said simply. The Void Reapers who murdered our people must be turned over for trial. The Zephyrian officers who aided them must face punishment, and the Council must formally apologize for its failure to protect human civilians as required by the Accords. And if we refuse? The Draconian's voice was like distant thunder. Sarah's expression didn't change, but something cold and implacable entered her eyes. Then, humanity withdraws from the Council. We will establish our own government, make our own treaties, and defend our own people. And we will remember who stood by while human children were murdered. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Several delegates began speaking at once, but the Zephyrian delegate's metallic voice cut through the noise. You cannot survive outside the Council's protection. Your species would be destroyed within a year. Perhaps, Sarah acknowledged. But we would die as free beings, not as pets begging for scraps from their master's table. And before we fell, we would make sure that everyone knew exactly why we chose to fight rather than submit. She gestured to the images still floating above her head. These fleets aren't just for defense. Humanity has spent 3 years mapping every Council installation, every major trade route, every strategic resource deposit in this sector. If we fall, the galaxy will know that the Council's promises of protection are worthless, that their high-minded principles are nothing but propaganda to keep lesser species in line. The chamber erupted again. But this time, the noise was different. Where before there had been outrage and indignation, now there was fear. The assembled delegates were beginning to understand that the small, seemingly helpless species they had been casually mistreating had grown teeth. The Council does not negotiate with terrorists, declared the Carvex delegate. But its voice lacked the conviction of its earlier statements. We're not terrorists, Sarah replied calmly. We're citizens demanding justice under laws that you wrote and swore to uphold. The fact that you see our request for equal treatment as terrorism tells us everything we need to know about how you really view humanity. She deactivated her holographic display and clasped her hands behind her back. The Council has 48 standard hours to respond to our demands. If justice is not forthcoming, Humanity will chart its own course through the stars. Without waiting for permission, Sarah turned and walked toward the chamber's exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet, each step seeming to count down the seconds until a decision that would reshape the galaxy. As the doors closed behind her, the chamber exploded into frantic discussion. For the first time in their long history, the Galactic Council faced a species willing to walk away from their protection rather than accept their neglect. The age of human compliance was over. What would follow would test every assumption the galaxy held about power, justice, and the price of freedom. Outside the chamber, Sarah Chen allowed herself a single moment of doubt. She had just gambled the future of her entire species on the hope that the Council would choose justice over convenience. Now all she could do was wait and see if humanity's bold stand would lead to salvation or destruction. The stars outside the station's windows seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were waiting to see what choice the Council would make. In 47 hours and counting, the galaxy would have its answer.